in the action. You can see some spaces there, lighter blues, but also the mix is now getting a little bit farther north. So that continues. And then notice Saturday at 3 o'clock, we could have a pretty big dry spell during the afternoon Saturday. It's not going to be all day. But then comes Saturday evening, here's 6 o'clock, picks back up. Some of that sleet now getting into northwest Arkansas. And northwest Arkansas should be mainly snow, but a little bit of sleet could mix in there. And this is probably the biggest chance of seeing any ice the farther north this goes, especially again in southern LaFleur, Scott, maybe portions of southern Logan and southern Sebastian County as well. This will continue through, again, about Saturday night. You can see midnight still continuing. And then Sunday morning, the last gasp of some snow moving through. Now, this cuts off at 6 a.m. Sunday, but I think, again, this should be out of here by noon at the latest. Just maybe a few flakes flying afterwards. So, with that, snow and sleet totals have changed a little bit. I do think for northwest Arkansas, I'm sorry, I'm covering up some cities, but everywhere in purple is going to see about 8 to 12. Since it's mostly going to be snow, I think this is going to be some pretty heavy. Hey everyone, I'm 5 News Meteorologist Danny Cassidy. Hopefully you're having a great day so far, so hopefully you're hearing me okay. We just had a little bit of technical difficulties to start there, but we are now up and running. So again, I'm here to answer any of your questions you may be having, whether that's be regarding snowfall, maybe travel, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through an extended forecast, just basically show you what we've been seeing, and then after that I'll try to answer some questions, as you know, maybe when I go through the forecast that'll answer some of your questions, and then as we get to the end of it, if you still have more questions about things specifically, then we'll get to it and I'll do the best I can to help in any of those scenarios. So first, I do want to show you what it looks like here for today. So winter storm warning is in effect for the entire 5 News coverage area. That is until Sunday morning, technically Sunday afternoon, but I think most of it will be done falling on Sunday. You can see that pink is indicating that, yeah, we're going to see some heavy snow, some sleet, maybe even a little bit of ice as well. So travel disruptions are expected for this system, as you may expect. And I do want to continue to look for, it looks like the stream is working here. Let me see, you're probably going to hear myself here. Okay, that was scary, but I heard myself there. So we have our stream multiple ways on YouTube, on Facebook. So again, I'm going to try to answer your questions as well as through Haymarket, our text number. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to text that or drop them in the chat here. So again, I'm just trying to watch on every single stream that we have what that looks like. So again, we have a winter storm warning in effect starting Friday afternoon through Sunday morning for those that are just joining us. That looks like it'll be mainly some snow in northwest Arkansas, as well as some sleet and ice for the river valley. So we'll show you what that looks like here. So here are the headlines. So again, timing is going to be that rough timeline you just saw, but there's going to be 2 distinct waves. The first one is going to be Friday night through Saturday about noon, and then there's going to be a break, and then Saturday night through Sunday morning, that's going to be kind of the second wave. So those are those 2 distinct waves there. Precip type, mostly snow in northwest Arkansas and northern parts of the river valley, but we are going to see some sleet for much of the southern half of the river valley, and maybe even a little bit of some freezing rain for those in southern Leflore County, as well as in Scott County, maybe a little bit of Logan County as well. We'll show you a better look of that here. So for that precipitation, it does look like, again, the dark blue, mainly going to be snow. So that's, again, all of northwest Arkansas and parts of the area, the river valley north of I-40. I do want to note that there still could be some sleet mixed in there, but I do think for the most part this is going to be snow. In terms of the light blue, that is going to be snow mixing with sleet and ice. So especially the farther south you go, that sleet chance is going to be a little bit more likely. Then the pink, it looks like the pink, so that includes southern Leflore County. That does include the community of Heavener, as well as Waldron there in Scott County, and maybe parts of southern Sebastian and southern Logan. We could see a little bit of some ice there as well. There could be some snow, but I think it'll mainly be sleet and then maybe a little bit of freezing rain and a little bit of snow. So that looks like what is going to be falling here for that. So that's obviously going to cause some disruptions, right? There's going to be slick roads. There are going to be very reduced visibility at times. Obviously, not everyone can be hunkered down. There are going to be people that have to travel. Your emergency crew, you're in the medical field, you know, those people are going to have to travel. So I get it. So for those that do, again, make sure you have that emergency kit. You had the extra layers, the blankets, gloves, what have you, as you're going out there. And the temperatures are going to be very cold. That's another thing about this. And when it does move through and it's very cold, the snow is going to be very powdery. So it's going to be easily picked up and blown around. And since it's so cold, it does 2 things. 1, it's going to stick around for a while longer. And 2, it reduces the effectiveness of treatment. So the snow and ice is going to probably stick through much of the early next week at the very least, just because there's going to probably be a lot of it and it's going to be so cold. All right, so I think this is what everybody wants to know. So this is going to look like the timing of this as we go through the weekend. So here's we go through this. So here we go for this. So this is 6:30 Friday morning. And as we go through Friday morning, I do think for the most part we'll be quiet on Friday. There is the chance that maybe we see a little bit of light freezing drizzle or light freezing rain, but I do think for the most part it's just going to be pretty dry. So I think the Friday morning commute should be okay. Friday afternoon, still, I think for the most part it does look okay. We still have to watch for that freezing drizzle or very light flake, but I think for the most part during the day Friday will be okay. So I think school should be able to get out okay, should be able to get to work okay. Again, we'll have to watch for the freezing drizzle, but for now it looks all right. But about 6 o'clock on our southern edge, that's when it'll start to build. On our western and southern edge, it'll build. And then by midnight, that's when we'll see things really pick up and probably area wide. Now notice the pink. Again, this looks like to be mainly sleet moving through, but it looks like, again, southern Leflore County, Scott, maybe a little bit of Sebastian and southern Logan. That's where we'll see for the higher probability of sleet. Here's 6 a.m. Pretty widespread. Could be some moderate to heavy snow at times. Winds could be very strong as well, gusting up to 35 miles per hour, blowing around that snow. Now here comes the first break. Here's noon. You're starting to notice that there's patches. There's not as much snow. And also notice that pink, that sleet, maybe a little bit of freezing rain, that's moving northward. So that's going to move a little bit more northward during the day on Saturday. Then 3 o'clock, there's going to be a dry stretch during the afternoon on Saturday. That looks to be the case no matter what model you look at. There's going to be a break sometime Saturday afternoon. Travel could still be tricky, but there is going to be some sort of break in the area. Then comes Saturday at 6 o'clock. Now the second wave returns, so about after sunset. And this is where some of that sleet could mix into parts of northwest Arkansas, and this would probably be the highest chance we see some possible freezing rain in southern LaFleur, Scott, maybe a little bit of southern Sebastian, and southern Logan County. This will continue through the overnight hours, late Saturday into early Sunday. Now notice Sunday morning, now the data cuts off at about 6:30, but this is where it starts to wrap up. It'll leave from west to east, and I think we should be done by about 10 a.m. there with the snowfall. So now here's the big question. How much are we going to get? So we introduced a new zone because of the fact that it looks like our far southern counties are going to be seeing a lot more sleet than anything else. So 8 to 12 there in the purple for all of northwest Arkansas and northern parts of the River Valley. 4 to 8 roughly kind of along I-40 and southward, and then less than 4 for the combination of sleet and snow. So I do want to note here, these totals do include sleet as well. It's not just snow. But again, the left side kind of tells you that purple, again, should mainly be snow, maybe a little bit of sleet. The dark blue, snow and sleet's going to mix in there a little bit. We could see maybe like in Fort Smith, let's say 4 inches of snow and maybe up to an inch in sleet. The less than 4, there's going to be a tight gradient of how much of that, again, is sleet or snow and maybe a little bit of freezing rain. So let's zoom in to kind of show you this a little bit better. So I apologize for the 8 to 12. It's just kind of stamped on Benton County. I didn't do that for any particular reason. It just happened to be there. But all of Benton County, it's not going to really matter where you are. It looks to be roughly about 8 to 12. And that's really through all of Washington County, Madison, Carroll. If you're in Delaware, Adair County, and Oklahoma, that looks to be the case. And you move a little bit farther south, again, in northern portions of Crawford County there into a little bit of northern Franklin. Again, looks to be the case that could see about 8 to 12. Now here's the tricky part, is where exactly does this line up for moving north and south. So about I-40 is roughly where the battle zone is of how much farther north does it go. Do we get more? Because if it goes farther north, we get more sleet, maybe a little bit more ice. If it moves farther south, we get more snow. So those totals can vary, but about roughly 4 to 8 here for much of Sequoyah County, northern Sequoyah County, or excuse me, not Sequoyah, northern LaFleur County, a lot of Sebastian County, southern half of Franklin. That does include Ozark, and Ozark's right on the edge there, parts of Johnson County, and then almost all of Logan County. And then less than 4, again, mainly seeing sleet, maybe a little bit of snow and ice. That includes Heavener in southern LaFleur County, Waldron and Parks in Scott County. So I think those are the two biggest questions, and I'll stop there to see if any questions are here on any of this. So there's been a lot of questions popping up, so hopefully that answered the biggest questions, but I do want to look to see if there's anything that I missed specifically with this. Looks like the timing, how much will they get, timing. So one question was, so will it be safe to drive from Garfield on to Fayetteville at all between Friday evening and Sunday afternoon? I'd say it's going to be definitely very tricky to travel there because, like I said, maybe if it's very early Friday evening, you could be getting away with it because it looks like until before midnight it could be okay. But definitely looking beforehand or after that, it looks to be very, very tricky. Let's see. My son-in-law works overnight at Walmart in Salisaw. Would it be better to have him take PTO Friday night? We live in Muldrow. So yeah, Muldrow, you're on the western edge of that. It looks like Friday night could be very tricky. You might be able to start the shift okay, but by the end of it, that's when things really start to pick up. So that maybe wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. So let's see. Looks like... Okay, so it looks like I think for the most part answered most of those questions there. Noah, I know you had some in Haymarket. Were there any there that you had to?
I noticed the pink goes through Clarksville. Should we be worried for freezing rain?
Yeah, so the question was, I noticed the pink moves through Clarksville, so I'm worried about freezing rain. So let's go back to that here, and we'll kind of zoom ahead again for this timing. So for that freezing rain potential, I do think that it'll mainly be in southern LaFleur and parts of Scott County. That's going to probably be the primary chance, and that chance is primarily going to be maybe up to a tenth of an inch of ice. I'm not sure if we'll see much more, which is still slick, but the most of the ice will be south of the area. So we're kind of moving forward here towards that pink. So again, as you saw it there in Johnson County there, as it kind of moves up, I think most of this pink that you're seeing, I know it primarily looks like freezing rain. I think most of this will be sleet. Where we're going to see the potential maybe freezing rain is going to be later Saturday, so this half of it. When it's that far north, the farther north it goes, the higher chance you have of seeing that freezing rain. So you notice in Southern LaFleur, Scott, Southern Sebastian, that's probably where the higher chance is. Like I said, in Clarksville and those higher pink areas, I think it'll mostly be sleet. Could we see a little bit of light ice mix in? Yes, but I think it'll mainly be sleet with any of that pink that does mix in there. So that's a good question on that one. All right.
A couple others.
Yeah, so Noah's helped me out here funneling questions for us.
Do you think we will lose power in Pocola?
Pocola. So I think I can't totally rule it out, but I think the good news is for Pocola, that's going to be more of a snow/sleet area, and with that, the freezing rain chance is rather low. Winds are still going to be somewhat strong, but usually the big power outages come when you have a wet, heavy snow, or let's say freezing rain first, and then it transitions into snow, and you get the wet, heavy snow that sits on the power lines. So this snow is going to be very powdery. So power outages in general, I think, will be low. Not to say you can't completely rule it out, but since the snow is powdery, it's not going to stick to the lines as much. And freezing rain for our far southern areas could be the case. But I think since, again, the sleet is more of a kind of light, kind of not fluffy, but a lighter precip, I think power outage chances are low. They're not zero, but they're lower with this system because of the powdery snow and the lighter effects of the sleet. Okay. All right. No anymore?
I got a couple more. My husband drives an 18-wheeler in the Altus area. Do you think he will be able to leave Monday or later in the week?
Okay, so got a question about next week. What does next week look like, right? Because it's going to be gone by Sunday, but what does it look like for early next week? So I still do think we're going to see quite a bit of traffic issues into next week because, and I'll get onto this here. Let me zoom ahead a little bit to this. It is going to be very cold. So an extreme cold warning was just issued for much of the area, and the Little Rock counties there, Scott, Logan, and Johnson County, they'll also be added to it, but this is for wind chills as low as 15 below. So with temperatures every night, it is going to be pretty freezing. So Friday morning here, we'll just kind of go on with this and then I'll answer the question. Temperatures in the mid-20s in northwest Arkansas, lower 30s in the River Valley. So you're noticing that, again, okay for tomorrow morning. Saturday morning, teens for much of the area, even some single digits in northwest Arkansas. Sunday morning, so this is really as it's starting to filter out, single digits for northwest Arkansas, low teens, even some single digits in the River Valley. And then Monday morning, it looks like maybe below zero area wide. So with it being very cold, and even during the day, highs will only be in the 20s on Sunday. And the Monday, I think it'll stay below 30. So with it staying so cold, with it being a pretty hefty amount of potential snow and sleet, and it's sticking to the roadways, it looks like if you have to travel, as Noah mentioned, say her husband drove an 18-wheeler and has to drive it for work Monday and beyond, it's going to be pretty tricky because I think it's going to stick to much of the roadways. Now, obviously, they're going to get the highest passing roadways first, right? They're going to get I-49, they're going to get I-40. But I do think that it could be an issue well into next week, especially for side roads. It's going to take a while for this to all be cleared out because the temperatures remain below freezing. The salt or the brine isn't as effective in colder temperatures. So I do think it is going to take a while for it to be. So we could see issues definitely into early next week with the snow, sleet, and ice. All right, any more, Noah?
Will the power go out in Benton County?
Okay, so a specific question here, will the power go out in Benton County? I don't specifically Benton County, but I do want to say, I don't think we'll necessarily see any power outages across there. Not to say it's zero, but I don't think necessarily the chance is there. I mean, it's a low chance, not a zero chance, but a low chance just because of the wispy snow, as well as the fact that winds are strong, but not super strong. They'll be gusting up to 35. As well as the fact that it's a low chance of freezing rain. So I think the chance is low. It's not zero, but it's low. Okay.
Do a couple more.
Okay, so Noah's got more questions here.
This is a loaded question, kind of. Is Alma going to get ice or more snow?
All right, is Alma going to get ice or more snow? So I do see people that are getting into the live right now. So let's back up, and wouldn't hurt to give us another total here, or another outlook of all of this when it starts. So again, here's what it looks like here for the timeline. So here's Friday morning, 6:30. Through the morning, for the most part, it looks okay. We could maybe see a little bit of freezing drizzle, but I do think for the most part it is going to be a dry day for the most part Friday because we're going to be fighting a lot of dry air. As we get into the afternoon, still looks pretty quiet. So I think that morning and afternoon commute, again, we'll have to watch for the freezing drizzle, but the morning and afternoon commute should be fine. So kids should be able to get out of school or you picking up from school, should be able to be okay for us there. Then as we get into the overnight hours, so here's midnight, starting to see it fill basically across the region. And it does look like that's when things will start to pick up. So I think by midnight. So again, even if you're traveling early Friday night, you should be okay. But once we get midnight, that's when the roads are going to start to deteriorate across the region, and then they'll be pretty slick beyond. So the specific question was, does it look like more snow or ice for Alma? So specifically, it does look like Alma would be more snow. It's kind of right on the border there along I-40. But I do think it's going to be more snow for the most part. So as we go through Saturday morning, there's going to be a little bit of a break. So the first wave is late Friday into early Saturday. So here's noon, and notice it's going to be a little bit of a break. Now that pink you're seeing, for those in LaFleur County, Scott County, Logan County, and then a little bit in Sebastian and Franklin, it does look like we are going to see that there's going to be a little bit of sleet, maybe a little bit of freezing rain with this as well. I think it'll mostly be sleet, but a little bit of ice is possible. So this first wave ends about noon, and then we're going to see a break. So you can see about 3 o'clock, we're going to see a little bit of an opening here across the area. Then Saturday evening, this is when the higher chance of sleet across the board goes up. And that's where we'll see maybe the better chance of maybe a little bit of light ice in the areas south of I-40. As we go through Saturday evening, that second wave picks up. You can see kind of on the border of sleet and snow, kind of near the I-40 corridor, a little bit higher of a chance of sleet the farther east you go. And then it now pushes more into snow early Sunday morning. And again, the data cuts off there at 6:30, but it does look like it'll taper off by about 10-11. So for those joining in late, that's what the timeline looks like. Again, starting about midnight Friday night area wide, but as early as about 6 or 7, and then ending Sunday morning at about 10 or 11 at the latest, with a gap there Saturday afternoon. So that's what it looks like for that. And again, totals, if you did miss them, looks like 8 to 12 in northwest Arkansas and a little bit of the northern half of the River Valley, 4 to 8 for the dark blue there, so along and south of I-40, and then less than 4, meaning mainly sleet and maybe a little bit of ice for the areas in light blue. So we'll show you that here a little bit better in terms of the area. Again, I apologize for Benton County basically having the 8 to 12 stamped over you. It wasn't on purpose, but really all of northwest Arkansas is expecting 8 to 12. Northern half of the River Valley, including areas like Uniontown, Chester, and northern Crawford County, does look like we'll see maybe about 8 to 12 inches of snow. And then in the dark blue, so this is the area where, again, Alma, again, right there near the I-40, I-49 interchange. Again, I think it'll mainly be snow, but some sleet's going to mix in there. So roughly about maybe 6 to 8 inches of snow looks pretty likely in that area. But you can see a lot of the dark blue here, a lot of northern LaFleur County, a lot of Sebastian County, a little bit of southern Crawford County. Going to see about 4 to 8 inches of snow, a lot of Franklin and Johnson as well. And then there's that light blue, that less than 4, meaning mainly ice in Heavener, Waldron, and Parks there in southern LaFleur and Scott County. So that's what it looks like for that. So again, if you missed that, that's what the snow totals look like, and that's what the timeline looks like. So Noah, any other big questions?
I mean, a couple of them are kind of self-explanatory. I feel like you already talked about wet versus like a dry snow versus wet snow. You can maybe reiterate that.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, if people are just joining, this is going to be more of a dry snow because temperatures are going to be well below freezing. It's going to be more wispy. So what that means is that it's going to be easier to pick up, so visibility is going to be reduced. Also not great snowball making snow or snowman snow, so that's unfortunate. Also going to be the fact that it's a little bit slicker. Usually wispy snow or light snow is usually a little bit slicker to drive on because the wheels kind of spin a little bit. So that's something to keep in mind. It's going to be easier to shovel. That's the good news. But it is going to be thinner. But that does also help with power lines. It won't necessarily weigh as heavily on those power lines, meaning power outage chance is a little bit lower. It's not zero, but it is a little bit lower there.
All right. Is there a chance for snow to exceed 12 inches in northwest Arkansas?
All right, so the question is there a chance for snow to exceed 12 inches in northwest Arkansas? I hate to say it, but yeah, I think so. I guess I would say I hate to say it. I do think that's a chance. I think we've seen some outputs get over 12, and I do think there's going to be, probably about, let's say, I don't know, maybe some areas get 13, 14 inches. It's not out of the realm of possibility. We just upped it to a foot recently, and we'll have to see as more data comes in. Does it get up to a foot? But I do think there's going to be probably a spotty area, probably in Benton County. I feel like historically Benton County usually gets some higher amounts that we're going to see maybe upwards of a foot there. I don't think it's going to be super common, but I do think we could see some areas exceed a foot.
A question is, why is there such a difference between Weather Channel app and local news announcements?
All right. So another question is that why is there such a difference between the Weather Channel and news? So the Weather Channel, you may have seen the viral posts on like Facebook and other social media of the Weather Channel posts. So basically what they were doing is they're taking one model output and basically plastering that. And one of them was very aggressive in snow, saying 18 to 24 inches, you probably saw. So that's what Apple Weather is putting out. It's basically pulling in that information and then spitting it out. So the reason why that is trending a little bit high is because usually when we look for these forecasts, we look for the snow liquid ratios, basically how much liquid is falling, and we transition that into snow. And a lot of times these models overestimate how much liquid is going to be falling, and therefore they overpump how much snow is going to be falling. So with this snowfall event, the snow to liquid ratio, basically for every inch of liquid, how much snow falls. So if you had a 10-to-1 snow ratio, that would mean that for an inch of rain, you'd have 10 inches of snow or 1 inch of liquid. So what it's basically saying is that, okay, let's say you had 2 inches of liquid, but the ratio was 12 to 1, then you have a 24-inch snowfall. So that's what it's saying. I do think we'll see roughly about a 12 to 1 ratio, but I don't think we'll see 2 inches of liquid pumped out of this. Another thing to factor in with this is when they say snow totals, it does also include sleet. So sleet is not included in the ice calculation, it's included in the snow calculation. So that's why we've also prefaced that this is snow and sleet, and that's probably what's going to cut into a lot of these totals. So those in the dark blue, especially the farther south you live, we might see a good helping of sleet, maybe an inch of sleet, and then to tag on 3 or 4 inches of snow. So that's why you're seeing the difference between that app and us, is that we're taking into account the liquid that's falling rather than, or accounting for the liquid that's falling rather than it's just pumping out a little bit higher than normal numbers. So I do see a question here too about next week we'll barely get it warm enough to melt the top layer of snow just to ice back over. What is your idea on ice and such next week? So it does look like, well, first I guess I'll answer the easier question first. Is Friday morning okay? When is it supposed to start? So Sheila Haskins there, it'll start probably Friday evening. So I think Friday morning should be okay. The afternoon should be okay. But about 6 p.m. to midnight, that's the onset time or when it starts, and then that's when it'll pick up. And it does say, let's say, so it seems like next week it'll barely get warm enough to melt the top layer. So I'm going to zoom ahead. Let's see if I can zoom ahead to the end here. Nope, that's not it. So let's see if I can go back here. Noah, actually, do you mind if you can switch to the 7-day forecast? Yeah, sorry. Sometimes technology doesn't get too great here.
You said 7-day?
Yeah, 7-day just for Northwest Arkansas first, and then the River Valley. Okay, so in terms of melting off that layer, it is going to be very cold. So the problem is that we're not going to get above freezing. So it's going to be from tomorrow afternoon through Tuesday afternoon. It's going to be below freezing for quite a while. It will melt at some point Tuesday, but you notice too that, like you said, Tuesday night into Wednesday, it's going to be cold again. So I think for much of next week, especially early on next week, it's going to take a while for crews to be able to treat the roads. And they're doing their very best. It's a lot of work, especially with how cold it is. But I do think, especially on side roads, it's going to take a while for that snow and that top layer to be melted off, especially if we do end up getting, Northwest Arkansas 8 to 12 inches of snow, and then the River Valley 4 to 8 inches, and you mix in a little bit of sleet, it makes it even harder to melt off. So I do think it could be until later next week when a lot of this is really cleared off, but it could stick around for I think it'll stick around through at least Wednesday next week, if not longer, on those side roads especially. So it's going to take a little while. Now, car tires, that friction, that helps warm things up a little bit, and air temperatures and road temperatures are a little bit different. Road temperatures, again, if there's more cars on it, like I-49, I-40, Highway 412, main highways like that, 71, that can rise a little bit above freezing, even though the air temperature may not be above freezing, but it is going to take a while for that to melt off. So I do think through at least Wednesday next week, a lot of this is still going to be hanging around in terms of that snow. Then I guess for the River Valley, showing you the same thing, that, again, Friday afternoon, it'll be above freezing for a little bit, and then it dips below freezing Friday night, and then through Tuesday afternoon, it's there. So it's the same not only in Northwest Arkansas, but the River Valley as well. It's going to be well below freezing for quite a while. And then through at least Wednesday, we are going to be seeing that. So I'd say through much of early next week. Okay. Noah, is there any other questions in there?
I guess we can do one more. How is driving going to be from Johnson County to Little Rock on Monday?
All right, how is driving going to be from Johnson County to Little Rock on Monday? So yeah, many of you may have to travel, outside the area next week. Maybe you're good to go this weekend, you can stay in, but early next week. So I answered a little bit of that, but I will say that, again, I think things are going to be pretty slick. I know, if traveling along I-40 there, that direction, it's going to probably be still a little bit slick, especially Monday morning, because temperatures are going to remain below freezing. So travel, again, Monday is going to probably still be pretty tricky because all of Sunday's below freezing, all of Monday's below freezing. The crew's going to try their best to treat the roads, but just because it is so cold, it's going to be even tougher for it because it's less effective to treat those roadways, especially because Monday morning, we're going to see temperatures below zero, wind chills as low as 15 below. So it's going to be very cold. Let me see if I can back up here to that. So there's the wind chills. So the wind chills here for us come, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, they're going to be cold, below zero. And I went a little too fast for that here. Let me go back. But yeah, so again, Saturday morning wind chills below zero for the most part, single digits in the River Valley. Sunday morning below zero in Northwest Arkansas, single digits in teens in the River Valley. Monday morning, 5 to 15 below. And another thing to note here is with these wind chills, obviously the wind chill is one thing, but the actual temperature is another thing. So Saturday morning into the teens, Sunday morning in the single digits and lower teens, Monday morning well below zero. So especially if you drive any diesel vehicles, it gels. So basically the fuel itself, it gels into more of a solid substance whenever it's below 17.5 degrees. So obviously Sunday night and Monday, it's going to dip below 17.5 degrees. And I'll show you the 7-day again because it's going to dip below 17 for much of the day on Saturday, much of the day on Sunday. So those trucks, those diesel vehicles that you may have, those are going to gel and they might not start up. You might have stalling vehicles. So I know some companies are running their trucks 24/7 or 24/3, I guess, through the weekend to make sure they don't gel up so that they don't start. So if you have a diesel vehicle, I would recommend making sure that fuel doesn't gel up because, let's say you don't drive from Friday until Monday morning and you drive, you might not be able to start it. And honestly, that's just good advice. Even if you're not leaving, just start the car for a little bit, make sure it's warm and running to make sure that it can start back up if you have to travel on Monday. How long possibly school out for Fort Smith? I can't necessarily answer for the school, but I will say just based on what I've seen, again, travel could be pretty tricky for Monday. I think I saw a comment that some schools already canceled for Monday. Friday again should be okay, but Monday again I can't necessarily answer. It could be very tricky just because it's not only cold, but also that snow and that ice could still be sticking around. I do want to go over one last thing here, so I'm going to get off the camera for 1 second. All right, sorry that I left there, but again, we are going to see that we're seeing that sleet and freezing rain, right? And you might be wondering why that is such below freezing. Since it's so below freezing, why are we still going to see sleet and why are we going to see freezing rain? Well, basically, it's the matter of what's above in the atmosphere, how warm it is above in the atmosphere. So rain, as you may expect, is going to be, just your cold air. Everything starts off as snow in the higher levels of the atmosphere. It's cold, and then it falls, and then it's rain because it's all warm air. But freezing rain, you have cold air up above, and then you have a massive layer of warm air just above the surface. So the atmosphere, unfortunately, it isn't uniform. It doesn't get warmer as it goes, farther down uniformly. It has stretches where it gets a little bit warmer, a little bit colder. So it starts as snow, and then it falls, melts, turns into rain, and then just above the surface, there's a little bit of a cold air layer that quickly freezes on contact. And that's why I think for the most part we'll see just sleet because our temperatures will be well below freezing. So I don't think there'll be a slim layer of cold. It'll be a lot colder, but that's what leads us into sleet. So you have the cold air up top, then you have a little bit of a warm layer that melts that snow into rain or liquid form, and then it refreezes with a bigger layer of cold, and that's where you get your sleet. So that's why you can still have, even though you're below freezing, sleet and freezing rain. And then, of course, snow is just all below freezing pretty much throughout the entire thing. So that's why we are saying, for the most part, seeing sleet and freezing rain. And that's why, even though it's well below freezing, that's why we're seeing that. And again, it's a kind of not crude example, but it's just an example of what is the difference between freezing rain and sleet, right? Freezing rain falls as liquid and it kind of gives a coat. It's like a glazed donut. It gives a coat of everything. Sleet, it's falling as like pellets. It's kind of like grapple, where it kind of like, it's not hail necessarily, but it kind of like pecks a little bit. It's like little sprinkles on a donut. It compacts into a layer of ice. So they all kind of run into each other and then kind of form into a layer of ice. So that's why sleet is a little bit better for the roads. It's not great because it's still going to freeze, but at least it kind of combines into the layer of ice rather than freezing rain, where it just freezes on contact and it's just a coat of ice. So that's the difference there between freezing rain and sleet. So I know some people are still entering the live stream, so we do have to get ready, or Noah has to get ready for the show, but I do want to just do one more time, just kind of run through everything quickly, and then we'll move on from there. Okay. So one last run through here of what we've got going on. So this is the timing. Again, for now, Friday morning and much of Friday afternoon looks pretty quiet. We head into noon, you can see it looks pretty dry. What we will have to watch for is the opportunity, or the potential, I should say, for maybe a little bit of freezing drizzle and or a little bit of a light flake. But for the most part, it looks pretty dry because it will be fighting a lot of dry air. Come 6 p.m., we'll start to see it start to develop. So you can see much of the area, even by 6, is still pretty quiet. But it will quickly ramp up. By about 9 o'clock, it gets to the river valley, and then midnight, it's area wide. And that's where I think things start to deteriorate a little bit with those roadways. And I think by Saturday morning, that's when things are going to get a little bit slick. So for those that are wondering what the precip type, it should be mainly snow for late Friday and early Saturday, and then maybe a little bit of sleet for southern LaFleur and Scott County. Then comes Saturday afternoon. So here's 12. You notice there's breakups of the snow, of the ice. So there's going to be 2 distinct waves. One is that Friday night into early Saturday, and then Saturday afternoon, there's going to be a little bit of a break. So 3 o'clock, not a whole lot going on. Travel is still going to be tricky, but I think we'll have a break of everything falling. But then Saturday evening, about 5, 6 o'clock, it picks back up. And notice the sleet layer, the mixed layer, it's a lot higher, right? I'll go like this. It's a lot farther north. So this is our best chance of seeing sleet area wide, as well as maybe even a little bit of freezing rain for our far southern counties. That continues for us as we get through the rest of Saturday night and early Sunday. That'll continue to move through. And then by 6 a.m. Sunday, it does cut off of the data, but then that's when it starts to clear out. I think a lot of that will be done by about 10 a.m. In terms of those snow sleet totals, again, one last time for those still watching or just joining, again, it's going to be northwest Arkansas, mostly seeing snow, 8 to 12 pretty much across the board there in the purple. I guess I'll go back here and just kind of show you the main types. Snow sleet mix in the dark blue, 4 to 8 there, kind of along and south of I-40, and then mainly sleet and maybe even a little bit of ice there with the light blue in LaFleur and Scott County, but I will say there will be some snow mixed in there as well. So again, 8 to 12 pretty much across northwest Arkansas. Maybe some spotty areas exceeding a foot. I can't absolutely rule that out. Again, that extends into parts of northern areas of the river valley like northern Crawford and northern Franklin and Johnson County. Then the dark blue, so much of the river valley under that somewhat 4 to 8, so some sleet mixes in, but still could see a decent helping of snowfall. And then as we get into the lower areas there of LaFleur and Scott County, that includes Waldron, Parks, Heavener, less than 4 inches, because I think most of that will be sleet and maybe even a little bit of ice mixed in. So we'll go back here just to kind of show you a recap of what we're expecting here. So again, that's what we've got so far for the system. Again, a lot's still going to change, and of course on top of that, it's going to be cold. We have a extreme cold warning. I'll fast forward to that. Extreme cold warnings in effect starting Friday night through at least Monday afternoon, if not longer, because it is going to be rather chilly. Wind chills could be as low as 15 below, and frostbite could occur in as little as 30 minutes. So that's the latest update here. We hope for you to stay safe out there. Again, if you don't have to travel, don't. But I know many of you do. You don't have a choice, and I absolutely get that. So make sure to have that emergency kit, whether it be blankets, or have blankets, extra batteries, chargers, maybe some non-perishable food, water that's insulated so it doesn't freeze. Maybe if you have cat litter to make yourself, get out of that traction. Obviously an ice scraper and maybe a little bit of some, windshield fluid to make sure it doesn't freeze. So again, make sure to have all of that covered. And again, if you have to travel, please be careful. For those that don't, stay inside, enjoy the snow. Unfortunately, it's not going to be very wet snow. It's more of a wispy, dry snow. So won't be great for snowballs for snowmen, but this looks to be a pretty significant storm. And this is my first time down in Arkansas and Oklahoma covering it. So we'll get through it together. We'll be here throughout the weekend. We'll continue to have updates on 5 News Plus, on air at 5 News, and of course on all of our social medias. Myself, Noah, Joshua, and Scott, of course, the Big Chief, will all be here to cover you and keep you safe. All right, that's the latest here from the 5 News Weather Impact Center. I hope all of you have a fantastic day and stay safe out there.